From YouTube, Booker DeWitt asks, if you could be one character from any game, who would it be and why? That's an interesting question. I would say most possibly, well, there's a lot of characters that actually always made an impression on me, but if I have to pick one, that would be, I think, Prince Arthur's from the Warcraft series, or I should say Warcraft 3, because he's a character who kind of a mental process in his head that happens during 2 campaigns where you control him is something relatively unique, even if it is a typical downfall of a paladin. It's something that usually is not really in a fantasy setting very deeply analyzed, and in the Warcraft series, in the way his even generic story of downfall happened, it's something I would like to experience in my own flesh. And tempting as it is, being a undead warrior with tremendous possibilities and a plague of undead at your fingertips, I wonder how I would, presented with such an opportunity, what would I do? That's a thing I would like to know, and that's why if I'm to choose one character, at least at this moment, it would be Arthur's. Second question from Booker DeWitt is, what do you think about the other books by Andrew Sapkowski? Which is your favorite adult fantasy franchise, excluding The Witcher? First of all, other books by Sapkowski. He actually started his career as a translator. I did read some of the translations he did, but to be honest, I think the best of his stories are the Hussitian trilogy. Yeah, I could be a little bit biased because I live in Poland and I live in Silesia, and that book series happens in our region, the place where I live. I actually think that he beated his highest level of fantasy writing when he wrote the Hussitian trilogy around 10 years ago. You have to remember, Witcher was actually published more than 20 years ago even. And Sapkowski, as much as he's interesting from a point of view of his research and where he actually creates his books, I think the Hussitian trilogy actually put him through his paces. It forced him to not only create the world as The Witcher, because Witcher is purely fantasy. The Hussitian trilogy is interconnected and intertwined with facts, with historical events that happened in Czech Republic, in Silesia as a region, in Germany, and so on in the late Middle Ages. And to intertwine the whole events of that series with the actual historical events, that's something I have to praise. Not to mention that some of the humor that he was able to put into that series of books was just so good. When it comes to the other question, what is my favorite fantasy setting besides The Witcher? First of all, The Witcher is not my favorite fantasy setting. I respect the Witcher series to a great degree. I have to say it makes sense. That story is deep, that the world is complex. But the thing is, the world that I have utmost respect to, and the world that actually introduced me to dark fantasy, was the Forgotten Realms series, the Baldur's Gate setting. I read a series of books. This world has several authors. There's several people who actually contributed to the whole big series of books. It's a primary setting for D&D games, tabletop games, and so on. But the thing is, it is the first one that was so complex that I encountered that I actually loved it. I loved almost every aspect of that multiverse, because Forgotten Realms is only Toril is basically only a part of a much bigger, much more complex universe, where also, yeah, Planescape Torment also happens there. Icewind Dale series happens there. The War of the Spider Queen happens there. A series of books filled with interesting characters, sometimes maybe a little bit too easy, but still good, and that's my favorite fantasy series. Another series of questions comes from Marmik, who asks me actually questions in Polish. I'll try to translate them for all my English-speaking viewers, because they are there as well. He asks, what is my favorite part of the Witcher saga? I would say that's the Last Wish short story in the book with the same title, because that one is the exact short story that creates and establishes one of the main relationships in the whole literature about The Witcher, which is obviously love between Geralt and Yennefer. Depends also how do you want to kind of narrow the saga, because if you're talking about the books alone, I would say it's hard for me to actually say without actually spoiling to people that part, because there's a one big reveal that we will most possibly see as well in The Witcher 3 that is in some way I think my favorite parts of the books, but actually from the whole Witcher, from what I read from the Witcher world, The Last Wish is the one. Another question is, what was another question? Yes, my favorite character besides Geralt. Geralt is actually not my favorite character from the Witcher franchise, if I can use that word. It's Dandelion Jaskier, because of amount of fun and amount of humor he brings into the series. That's why he is my favorite character from the whole trilogy. Obviously, if I have to say, I hate Falvik. I do love Ciri because she's also a very interesting character on her own. But when it comes to my love, I say without Dandelion Jaskier, without him, the trilogy, the books, they are just not themselves, and I think that's something you have to praise when you think about him. From where am I from? That's the good question. I'm from Poland, yeah, right, and Silesia, Upper Silesia. I don't want to reveal more. What are my activities besides YouTube? First of all, at the moment I'm doing a lot of things. I write stories, try to write stories. Actually don't have really that much time to do it. Hang out with friends, play bowling, listen to music. But if you're asking me about things I do for living, I can tell you what I was doing for the past 3 years. I started when I was still studying. I've been, employed in a variety of places. Unfortunately, none of those places actually translated to be a full-time job. But the thing is, I was basically doing a lot of media coverage. I was doing radio work, sound work, a little bit of that. Actually, YouTube started as my YouTube channel for gaming. Started when we 3 years ago started sort of a educational service with a lot of branching and so on. This service was basically video coverage of different events and places. We were going to places with cameras, with gear, microphones. We were doing sound work for people, for events. We were also creating sort of a live transmissions from educational and scientific conferences, big events like that. But that was not a full-time job. In a sense, I was doing that because one of my friends, he's a friend now, he started this video service affiliated with the place where I was studying. We started to create sort of a bigger, we started to collaborate with other people, started to basically fundamentally create a full-on internet video service from the beginning to the end. I still do some work with people there. I was doing a lot of work there, but if you watched my my reflection video, you might also find out that some of the situation there a little bit changed. Some of the things changed around when it comes to organization. I was not really forced to leave, but the thing is, I was not actually going to move forward as long as I was there. So I started 2 months ago, I started my own company, I would say. Something like that. It requires a lot of my time, and that's why also this is affected on the channel. That's why there are no Let's Plays, for example, for the past two months or so. But I still try to keep up, and I hope this will turn out eventually to be a profit, because basically what I need at the moment is a steady income of money, like I believe everyone. Another question from Marmik as well is, let me see, when for the first time I encountered the Witcher universe? Well, that's an easy one actually. Right after I finished The Lord of the Rings, which was and basically all of the Tolkien's world and Tolkien's literature, I started looking for additional things, you know. Fantasy was basically grasping me at that moment. I was then like, I think 14, 15, something like that. Somewhere between gymnasium and high school. You know what I mean, because you're asking in Polish, so I do think that you know about Polish educational system. How I found out, I think it was either someone pointed me to the books. I don't actually remember quite clearly, but I do know that it was like 2 or 3 months and I was through all of them when it comes to reading. What is my favorite game? What's my favorite game? Whoa, that's a difficult one. But I have to say, on top, I think there will always be Planescape Torment. A fantastical game, game that introduced me to RPGs, and I think a masterpiece that no one will ever reach again. This kind of level of quality that game presented, but I can talk about that game for hours. So I highly recommend try yourself with it. It has a phenomenal Polish translation. Not to mention that it's a game that I think every RPG fan should play. My favorite books genre, historical books, fantasy books, science fiction as well. Actually, that's a funny thing, because I easily watch science fiction movies. I usually accept science fiction in movies and in books. But fantasy movies, I have a little bit of a skeptical view of that. But if it comes to sheer books, I would say fantasy on number 1, science fiction number 2, history books number 3. History books means literature from 19th and 20th century. I do love everything, almost everything, starting from Captain Nemo, things like that, to basically even romance books, and history books that are actual facts about history. Like, let me see, do I have anything like that here? Not in front of me, not on the bookshelf, but books that are about historical figures, Napoleon, Middle Ages heroes, mythology as well. That's basically books I would recommend. My favorite movie, on top of my head, I would say it's a very difficult question, because I did a lot of movie coverage as well. But if you ask me about a specific one movie, it's impossible to tell. There's basically not even one I can give you. Besides, I can tell you what was the last one I was in a cinema. One of the last, I watched a lot of movies in cinema for the past few years. It was also connected a little bit with my job. But the thing is, the one that grasped me and made an impact on me, that's Interstellar. I really highly recommend that movie. There is an audio review of that movie on my channel, and it's as far as, you know, the longer time period I have between watching that movie. Today I would say best movie of 2014, but definitely not the best movie, best science fiction movie I saw. I would say that one, but it's definitely not my favorite movie of all time. Favorite movie of all time might be Scarface, but also Godfather. I do love the Italian mafia theme in movies. I also adore big Hollywood productions from 30s and 40s. So Gone with the Wind and this type of that period of filmmaking, which is, I know, very old, but basically my favorite. Yeah, that's for sure. Just a quick little reminder for Mr. Chris Asimor, who asked me questions on Twitter. He asked me questions, where do I live in Poland? I already answered that question. I said Upper Silesia. I do live in Poland at the moment. I basically emigrated from Poland actually for half a year because I was studying abroad, which technically is an emigration. But you also ask about the games and books. My favorite parts of the Witcher games and books. I already answered the question when it comes to books, but if you want to actually know about the games, I must say I love those games. They are really phenomenally done. They show something about our Polish software companies. But if it comes to an element in the games that I love the most, that would be chapter 2 of The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, but in Vergen. So when you choose in the first chapter Jorveth and you go to Vergen with dwarves, because the sheer atmosphere of that place, complexity of some quests there, and the general feel of Zoltan and his dwarven crew, priceless. And in my opinion, if Witcher 3 will not have anything on that level of quality to give us that I highly think that will remain my favorite part of the games. Another question, and the last one for this recording, because I actually can't sit down here for too long because I have other things to do as well, comes from, let's say, Betrayed PSN, that's from YouTube. Betrayed PSN asks, will I be replaying The Witcher 1 and 2 within the next month before the release of The Wild Hunt? Actually, no, I will not. That's because The Witcher 1, I played the game 2 times at least, once siding with the Scoia'tael, once with the Order, even third one I think. Yeah, I do remember that I also tried the neutral path. I played Witcher 2 4 times, including the Let's Play. I saw every possible main storyline. It's not that I'm bored of that game. With Witcher 1 it is quite difficult because the game is quite long. I think it's like more than 40 to 60 hours of gameplay, with not only the side questing but a lot of running around and fighting, basically grinding Geralt. And The Witcher 2, anything I would play, any way I would play, be it Jorveth's path or Roach's path, or doing quests this way or that way, I've seen it all. which means the game has actually nothing new to offer to me. And as far as it would be fun to play it, I have a set of games I still want to play. I recently uninstalled Skyrim, which sounds funny. I do play Civilization 5, so I have a lot of games I want to play before The Witcher. I still need to play Dragon Age Inquisition, which is, by the way, a game that is set to cover 100 hours of gameplay. Dramatic. And obviously Pillars of Eternity is on the list very highly, because I really want to play this game. So thank you for all of you who joined me here. Thank you for questions, obviously. And stay tuned, because there will be a 400 subscriber special. I have the idea in my head, I have the game, I have everything set. I just need to finish it and actually record it. Hope to upload tomorrow another bunch of questions. And so thank you for your time as always. My name is Gabriel, and see you soon. Ciao.